My guest today is former Trump White House press secretary, my fellow Newsmaxer, Sean Spicer, the current host of Spicer and Company. He's the author of the new book, Radical Nation. Sean Spicer, thanks for joining me.
You bet, Dick. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I loved your book. I mean,
Thank you. I appreciate the kind words and support that you've had for it.
you know what I said about your book? Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand was a work of fiction. But if they ever transformed it into nonfiction, it would be Radical Nation, the book that you just wrote. It's
Well,
your book
that's quite
basically.
that is an unbelievable compliment for anyone who's ever read Ayn Rand or understands the importance that has in sort of giving us a glimpse into what the future could look like. But you also gave me a great analogy that I have stolen, which is that if an athlete had done what some of these folks in the Washington Post and the New York Times done in terms of winning their Pulitzer Prizes, with respect to the Steele dossier, they would have had to have given them back. An athlete had been doping or cheating, they would have had their medals stripped, and yet these members of the media continue to keep all of the awards that they received for a hoax of a story. And
Right.
you were the one who gave me that idea, so thank you. I've been using it very, very liberally and generously in interviews.
I hope conservatively. uh, let's go back though to Ayn Rand. If Ayn Rand set up the blueprint for what a socialist hell would look like, which she really did, your book takes it from the realm of imagination and fiction and explains how what's going on fits that mold. So, like I said, it's the nonfiction version of Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah, but it's funny when you read Atlas Shrugged, you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, it'll never get to this. It'll never happen
Right.
like that. Um, and yet you're right when you read this and you're saying, okay, well, this is, you take immigration. You're letting tens of thousands of people a day over our southern border for no other reason than I think you want to populate the ranks of a political party going forward in the future. So I think that there's days in which you think to yourself, there's no way that this could really be happening on a
Right.
multitude of policies, and yet they are over and over again. And just in the past week, we've seen Congress pass, $1.7 trillion in this Build Back Better that was full of things that you're thinking to yourself, there's no human, Democrat or Republican, that should be voting for certain things.
Right.
There's no way we could have a continuing resolution that would allow the government to be funded with certain things. And yet it just happens, and no one stops and says, are you kidding me? We just spent
Yeah.
$1 trillion, 2,460 pages that no one's read.
Sean, I believe that the Democrats can't stick with Joe Biden. They may want to. He may want the nomination. But whether it's by the 25th Amendment, which is unlikely, or a retirement, which I think is more likely, perhaps a forced retirement, I think that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will not be on the ballot in 2024.
I've been very clear that I think Pete Buttigieg will be the 2024 nominee
Oh,
for
you
a lot
have?
of reasons. Yeah, there's no question in my mind. I think Biden, I think, and the point that I lay out in the book is that he understands and is very desirous to have a legacy. I mean, he wants to appoint the first woman of color to be vice president. He wants to appoint the first LGBTQ person to lead a department. Again, for those conservatives that are listening to your show and saying, but Rick Grenell, that's right, Rick Grenell was in President Trump's cabinet, but he was not the head of a department. But my point is, Biden, I think, will feel like his legacy is cemented as this guy that was the most progressive president that outdid FDR by appointment only, i.e., I did all these people first. I didn't accomplish things, but I was able to appoint these type of folks, and therefore will feel like he's accomplished enough. And I think enough people around him, including family members, will say, okay, it's time to go. You've made your mark. So I'm
He'll,
more on that
he'll
end
have a
of the scale.
he'll have a great sense of accomplishment, like the captain of the Titanic, who congratulates himself on a successful first half of the trip.
Right, but the nice thing is that if it works out right, then there's no second half of the trip. They just
Yeah.
stop him when he's halfway across the ocean
And
at the
meets
first
the
stop and
iceberg.
go from there.
Yeah.
But I do think that look, you and I have talked about this, that Harris wasn't chosen because she was the most qualified. She didn't bring anything to the table. If you look at Biden to Obama, you look at Gore to Clinton, you look at Cheney to Bush, you even look at Pence to Trump. They brought a level of expertise in government and within, the bigger political circles. In Pence's case, he really was tied and had expertise into the evangelical community, and he brought that to Trump at a time that he needed it.
Yeah.
She didn't bring anything. What did she bring? Nothing. And she brought the ability to check a box. So there's no way they're sticking with her. She didn't bring anything. She didn't make it past the first round.
Jump to it. I think that that Obama deliberately set up the nominating process so New Hampshire, Iowa, and Nevada would be irrelevant, because whoever won South Carolina would send the signal to the blacks on Super Tuesday that would in turn leverage the Democratic nomination. And normally you'd say Obama will name Biden's replacement. But I think that there may be a McGovern-like, McCarthy-like surge in the Democratic Party. They love that kind of stuff. That nominates one of the total crazies from the squad.
I think from the people that I talk to on the inside, they really love the Pete Buttigieg story. He's a veteran. He's articulate. He's younger. He's a fresh face. He's got now, these 2 young children that he and his husband have adopted. I think he symbolizes what a lot of the progressive left wants to see. So I don't doubt it. I mean, obviously, there's a process that you have to go through. But from the people that I talk to in the Democratic Party that are high up, they believe that Buttigieg is the symbolic.
But again, like I said at the opening, I think that I look at it less from the point of view of the donor than the recipient, the public opinion, the voter. And I think that they will look at Buttigieg as, yeah, good, I'm glad he's not Biden. He certainly is younger and more articulate. But oh my God, what would happen if we had AOC? How great that would be. A true believer, Hispanic, young, aggressive, sock it to Trump, don't let him get away with anything. I think they would absolutely flip out over her. I think she'd lose 50 states, and the Democratic Party wouldn't be seen or heard from again. But I think that's really possible.
I can't say that I have as much understanding of the Democratic process that I do of the Republican process. But I just have a hard time believing that at the end of the day, if you think about the system that spit Biden out, it's the same system that protected Hillary Clinton, right? This is a system on the Democratic side that protects the old guard, that has a system that's set up to ensure that the crazy progressives can only do so much damage so far. And I think that they want somebody who checks the box, right? So Buttigieg may not be as nuts as AOC. But he's in there. He's in the ballpark.
We could vie with each other all night about how crazy the Democrats can be, and they can be much crazier. But Sean, I love your book. I think that it takes the fiction of Ayn Rand and applies it to what's going on in the world today, and is really a seminal work. So congratulations, and thanks for coming on.
I appreciate, as I said earlier, Dick, I appreciate your support and counsel. It means a lot. So thank you for everything that you've done to help tell people what's in it and why I think it is an important work to have out there right now.
Thank you.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.